Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Boker Tov. Nice to see everyone, and thank you for joining us for a little bit of learning, a little bit of Chizuk, Be'ezrat Hashem, and as we do on a regular basis, let's begin with a chapter of Tehillim, Kapitel Tehillim, Kuf Chav Aleph, Shir Lamalos Esayinai L'Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai Osei Shamayim V'Aretz. Al yitain lamod raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach b'alayla Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra yishmor es nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzeischa v'echa me'ata v'yad olam. And with those words of Tehillim, we have our soldiers in mind. We have those that are in captivity in mind, those that are injured, those that are in hospitals, that please God are healing. We have all of Klal Yisrael in mind, those that are suffering, those that are going through difficult days. And we ask Hashem for his rachamim and for salvation. So on this very theme of praying, of davening, of supplicating before Hashem during difficult times, I want to talk about in my words of Chizuk this morning, ideas around tefillah, of davening, and that is such an important part of what we are doing. All the different facets, all the different areas that we are all trying to help out and to be engaged in. And this certainly is one of them, which Chazal, which our tradition going back to the Torah itself, of Avraham Avinu, in terms of davening, in terms of reaching out to Hashem in times of distress, in times of need, and how important it is for all of us to be engaged in that and to do that in a meaningful way. So what I'd like to do this morning is to share three ideas from Rav Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Kook, Rav Kook, the area of tefillah, and hopefully these ideas can be inspirational and can be meaningful during this time. And all three ideas come from his beautiful Perush on the Siddur Olat Riyah, which is a collection of teachings of Rav Kook, many that he wrote on the Siddur, many that his son Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook compiled as part of his commentary on the Tefillah. And we're going to look at three different statements that are made in the Gemara about davening, and we'll see each of them in terms of Rav Kook, how he understands them. The first is another kapitel of Tehillim that we say on a regular basis, and that is the Ashrei. And the Gemara says the following. The Gemara in Brachos says that Kol ha'omer tehillah l'David b'chol yom gimel pamim, if you say the Ashrei 3 times a day, muftach lo shehu ben olam haba, that person is guaranteed a place in olam haba. And it's interesting, we have our davening set up that way, that we have Ashrei 2 times in the Shachris, in the morning davening, and then we say in the Mincha as well. And one can say it within those davenings, and one can say the Ashrei 3 times a day, anytime during the day that one is saying Tehillim. But the Gemara says that there is a special merit to reciting the Ashrei 3 times a day, Olam Haba. And the Gemara itself asks the question, what is so significant about the Ashrei? And the answer that's given in the Gemara, and just reading the words, the Atiyah Ba'alef Beit, it says that what's unique about the Ashrei is that it has the Aleph Bet, that each of the sentences begins with the letter of the Aleph Bet, and also the Ipe Poteach et Yadecha. And also what is unique about the Ashrei, says the Gemara, is that it has the sentence of Poteach et Yadecha, that Hashem opens his hands and provides for everyone's needs. And the Gemara concludes, Gemara Brachos Dav Dalid Ela Mishum de Isbei Tarte. This combination of having the Aleph Bet and having the pasuk of Poteach et Yadecha, so that is the unique characteristic, the unique nature of the Ashrei. Now the question is, what does that mean? What is the significance of those two items? And this is where Rav Kook steps in and gives the following interpretation. He says that what does the Aleph Bet represent? The Aleph Bet represents the very foundation of what it means to believe in God. The Aleph Bet represents the letters, it represents the words, it represents the Torah, and it represents really the intellectual or the academic understanding of what it means to believe in Hashem. And that's one aspect of believing in Hashem. in terms of the rational, in terms of studying, in terms of seeing what it is the Torah says about God, seeing what our books, what our holy books say about belief in Hashem. That is more of in the intellectual realm in terms of belief in God. And there is an intellectual component. We need to understand what it means to believe in God. We shouldn't necessarily think about God in the way that we thought about God as little children, that we should have a more mature understanding of God. So the Aleph Bet represents an understanding of Hashem, an intellectual understanding of Hashem. But Rav Kook says that there is another aspect that is highlighted in the Ashrei, and that is the sentence of Poteach et Yadecha. Poteach et Yadecha means that God opens his hands, or that God opens his arms to us, that we feel closeness to Hashem. So Poteach et Yadecha represents a different aspect of our relationship with God, and that is the emotional aspect, that is the feeling of closeness to Hashem, to feel that the Shekhinah, that God's presence is near us. And Rav Kook concludes this little piece, and I'll just read a line from Rav Kook. Im kol zeh od lo higia el hachefetz ad sheyeh gam ken shalem b'bitachon. It's not enough in our davening, in our relationship with God, to have only an intellectual understanding of God, to say, I believe in God. V'abitachon atzmo od lo yo'il lo ki im b'yoto ayedei menuchat nafsho. Bitachon, we are to reach a level of bitachon, of faith in God, that we feel a certain menuchat hanefesh, that we feel that Hashem is with us, that his presence is with us, that we know that in the room right now, that Hashem is with us, and during difficult times, and during times that are painful, and times of suffering, and times that we're in right now, to feel the presence of Hashem. And only then, mishalem ledat et kono, only at that time, only with that kind of understanding, again, really beyond understanding, an emotion, a feeling, that we feel a close relationship with God, then we have the dad, then we have the true knowledge, which is really the deeper sense of knowing that Hashem is with us. So Rav Kook understands that statement in the Gemara, that what's so special about the Ashrei, and maybe it's not just the Ashrei, but what is special about davening, is that we come to davening both from an intellectual point of view, in terms of an understanding, in terms of an insight, in terms of wisdom, that we believe that there is a God in the world. That is represented by the Aleph Bet of the Ashrei, but also the idea of Poteach et Yadecha Masbir L'chol Chai Ratzon, that we feel Hashem opening his hands, or that we're in the hands of Hashem, that we're in the embrace of Hashem. And that combination is really the perfect combination in terms of our relationship with God. Both an intellectual, from an intellectual point of view, from a point of wisdom, but also very importantly in terms of a feeling, in terms of an emotion, in terms of a relationship. There's a story that is told about a Talmud. He was a student of the Chafetz Chaim, a young man who was really a great student of the Chafetz Chaim. And at some point he began to dabble a little bit in philosophy, into the secular world. And he began to have certain questions, certain doubts. And he went to the home of Rav Kook to speak to Rav Kook about some of the questions and some of the challenges that he was facing. And he comes to the door of Rav Kook, and he sits down with Rav Kook, and he spends many hours speaking to Rav Kook. And it's very late at night. And Rav Kook offers him a place to stay over that evening. And he sleeps over at the home of Rav Kook. The next morning he wakes up to the sounds of somebody davening in the other room. And he hears Rav Kook beginning his davening, his private davening, the first part of davening. And he hears that he's reciting the Akedas Yitzchak, which some have the custom, some have the minhag of reciting that every single day. And he hears the kind of emotion, and he hears his neshama, the neshama of Rav Kook, reciting every single word. And at that moment, that student said that I want to become a student of Rav Kook. And all those doubts that I have, I no longer have those doubts. I see a person, I hear a person with such a love, such an emotional connection with Hashem. And he became a lifelong student of Rav Kook. He became known as the Nazir, Rav David Cohen, and he spends the rest of his life as a student of Rav Kook. He edits one of his most important works, the Orot HaKodesh. And this is what Rav Kook is speaking about, the way that he understands the tefillah of Ashrei, and really what it means in terms of prayer in general. We have both the intellectual, but also a sense of closeness with Hashem, which is so important to feel as we are davening. Another statement that Gemara makes, the Gemara says the following, and this is a halacha that we are all familiar with, but it's found in the Gemara Brachos Daf Yud Amud Beis. It says, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina said the following, HaMispalel, the one who davens, Sarech sheyichavein et raglav, that you have to keep your feet together, referring, of course, to the Amida, that we keep our feet together for the Amida. So there are many ways of interpreting what that halacha is all about, what the meaning of that halacha is. Maybe on the simplest level, it's a way of concentrating, that we're not moving around, that we're not, looking at in different places, moving to different locations, but we're steady, we're in one place. Rav Kook offers another interpretation, a deeper interpretation, and he says that we can compare halicha, the idea of walking, to standing. And when we talk about halicha, when we talk about walking, and it's interesting that we use that word halacha, it means that we're moving from one place to another place, and that we're on a journey, and that we're moving forward. And that's something that's very, very healthy. It's something that we need to do in terms of moving forward, in terms of our religiosity, in terms of our connection, in terms of our knowledge as well, that we're always ascending. So that's what halicha is all about. That's what walking is all about. But it's interesting when it comes to the Amida, that we're supposed to be omeid, that we're supposed to be standing in one place. And I'll read to you one line from Rav Kook, the way that he interprets the importance of standing in one place. V'hatfilah mirashemet et hamalot hakniyot. What is so important about tefillah is that the faith that we have, that we are to strengthen that faith during tefillah. It's not about moving forward. It's not about learning something new or a new insight. It's taking the faith that we have and strengthening that faith. It's staying in that place and doubling down on our emunah. Liot kivuot v'kayamot, that it should be steady, that it should be something that is lasting. And just thinking about a mashal of a car. A car is halicha, that we're moving, that we're going place to place. We get in a car because we want to go to another destination. And there's a time for that. But there's also a time that the car is just sitting, that it's being filled with gas, right? That it's just being re-energized, so to speak. And that, I think, is what Rav Kook is referring to in terms of our davening as well. We take the time to daven in the morning, in the afternoon, if we daven in the evening, anytime that we are reciting Tehillim as well. It's a time that we are strengthening. It's a time that we are bringing greater faith to that emunah that we have, and how important that is to do on a regular basis. So that's a beautiful interpretation for the Amida. One other idea from Rav Kook. And here, an interesting line in the Gemara. These all come from the early dapim in the Gemara Brachos, where we talk about davening, the importance of davening, the halachos of davening. So a statement is made. This is Dav Vav, and it says, Kol hamitpalel achorei beit haKnesset nikra rasha. Somebody that davens in the back of the shul, or maybe it's really outside the shul, that person is called a rasha. I wouldn't say it's the back of the shul. There are good people that daven in the back rows of the shul, but maybe it means somewhat outside of the shul. That person's called a rasha. Interesting statement that the Gemara makes. And what does that mean exactly? Kind of standing on the outside of the shul, and why is that such a negative thing to do? Again, we can think of maybe the most basic interpretation. That person's, not joining the shul, that he's davening outside. He's by the window of the shul, by the door of the shul, which is not really the place to be. It's not proper kavod. Rav Kook offers the following very, very insightful, very beautiful interpretation. And with this, he really says something very profound about what davening, what prayer is all about. And he says there's the outer part of prayer and there's the inner part of prayer. And what is the inner part of prayer? Well, let's talk about the outer part. The outer part of prayer, he says that one part of prayer, and I'll read the line from Rav Kook, Ha'achat, one aspect of prayer, hi legadel u'leramem shem Hashem yitbarach. It's a way of praising God. It's a way of uplifting the idea of the presence of God in the world. U'be'emet ikar tachlit mitziut hatfilah nivra'a lazeh kidei shiyakiru habriyot yad Hashem. What is davening? Davening is to recognize God. It's a greater recognition of Hashem. And the truth is, it's easy to forget that in the day-to-day routine. We don't always feel the presence of God. We're not always aware of God. So the moments that we put towards prayer are times that we recognize in a much deeper way, in a much fuller way, the presence of God, the existence of God in the world. But Rav Kook says that's really not the essence of prayer. What is the essence of prayer? What does it mean actually to go inside the shul, so to speak? And he writes the following. He says, the essence, the ikar of tefillah, shehi atzad hamusari. And that is that we are to take from tefillah an ethical and a moral message from tefillah. Hi merumezet bifnim shel beit HaKnesset. And that's what's being hinted to in a symbolic way of entering the shul, that there's a deeper meaning to tefillah. And what is that deeper meaning of tefillah? And this is really a very, very interesting, and again, I think a very profound idea, and maybe a little bit different than the way that we often think about tefillah, is that we are to learn from tefillah. We are to be changed by the tefillah. There's a rabbi who said that when you turn the pages of the siddur, you shouldn't just be turning the pages of the siddur, let the pages turn you, that you should be changed by the tefillah. You should be uplifted by the tefillah, that you should learn a moral lesson, ethical lessons from the tefillah. And what does that mean exactly? And I think Rabbi Soloveitchik also has a notion that's very similar to this. And I'll just read a line from Rabbi Soloveitchik. And he talks about the tefillot that we say, or the brachot actually, we say in the morning as we start the day. And we have that long list of brachot, the birchot hashachar, that we talk about Hashem who clothes the naked, that allows us to stand, that provides for all of our needs, right? That long list. This is what Rabbi Soloveitchik writes as a comment on those blessings, those brachot in the morning. God heals the blind, frees the prisoners, lifts up the oppressed. Each utterance of praise is filled with an ethical motif. Interesting, that same word that Rav Kook uses in terms of musari. There are ethical lessons to be learned from the tefillah, a moral principle that must also be realized by man himself. We pronounce these brachot. We not only thank God for the normal physiological functions of man, but we acknowledge God's all-inclusive morality and announce publicly our commitment to imitate his ways. And what does that mean? That when we are davening, we are supposed to be inspired by the words of davening. The way that we speak about Hashem's mercy, the way that we speak about Hashem caring for the needy, that Hashem is rachamim, that he is chanun verachum. What we are supposed to learn from that is that we are to be that in our lives as well, that we are to imitate v'halachta b'drachav. So davening is not only a time to recognize God. That's one aspect of davening. And Rav Kook says, to some degree, that's not even the essential part of davening. The essential part of davening is how we are moved by davening. That after we daven, after we say the words of davening, that we are inspired to do more for one another, that we have more empathy, that we have more sympathy, that we care for one another, that we take the words of davening and the inspiration of davening, and that makes a change in us. And Rav Kook says that that person that does not enter the shul, that's standing b'achorei beit HaKnesset, so the person does not involve himself in the community. He doesn't see, he's davening on the outside. He doesn't see everybody on the inside. He doesn't see what people are struggling with. He doesn't see how he can be helpful. He doesn't see himself as part of the community. And that, Rav Kook says, is so important to our davening. Davening is not about, as he writes here as well, it's not necessarily about changing God's mind, but it's about changing our mindset. It's about how we can become better, how we can become more sensitive. And I'll share just one last idea to close, and this also comes from Rav Kook, in terms of actually the very first word that we say of davening every single day, and that is the modeh ani. Those are the first words on our lips. Many people, even before they get out of bed, as they're waking up in the morning, the very first thing that is recited, the halacha says to say the modeh ani. And Rav Kook says that the word modeh actually has two meanings. The word modeh means todah, it means thanks as we begin a new day. And I'll just read those words from Rav Kook. But bitoy modeh Mishutefet hi lahoda'a migzerat todah. So one aspect of moda, it comes from the root word todah that we're all familiar with, that we thank God for a new day. And that's certainly part of what every one of us should do, that should be a feeling as the sun comes up and the beauty around us, to see the opportunity of a new day, to see the blessing of a new day. And we begin with the word todah. But that's only one aspect, Rav Kook says, in the word modeh, that we say todah. But there's another aspect as well, and that is, and I'll read to you just a few words from Rav Kook, ubmigzerat, and it also comes from another source or another root, hitvadut vehoda'a al ha'emet. That the word modeh also means that we concede or we affirm the truth. In the Gemara, we talk about a modeh b'miktsas, that somebody who admits, he says, yes, it's true that I owe you a certain amount of money. Or we say modeh al emet, which means that we admit, we concede, yes, that is true. So when we wake up in the morning, one part of waking up in the morning is the idea of todah, of giving thanks. The other is emet, that we say that there's truth in the world, that there's meaning in the world, that all that's happening around us is from Hashem. And there's emes. That is the other aspect of truth, and the other aspect of saying modeh ani. And what that means, I think, for us today is that we wake up in the morning, and these difficult days, it's not always easy. We should be very thankful for the great blessing of the new day, of the sun, and of the beauty around us, and for those of us in Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael, just the very blessing of being here. But then there's also the difficulties and the challenges that we're facing throughout the day as well. And with the word modeh, we are also affirming that we believe that everything around us has a purpose, that it's not coincidence, it's not happenstance, it's all hashkacha, it's all from the Yad Hashem. And that's the emet part of modeh, of the modeh al ha'emes. So those are some ideas that we can think about, that hopefully are inspirational ideas as we're davening every day, as we are reciting Tehillim, as we are engaged, especially at this time, in prayer, supplicating Hashem, turning to Hashem, that Hashem has rachamim, that these are some ideas that we can think about. We should be inspired by the words of tefillah. They should be words that bring us closer and closer to Hashem. They should be opportunities that instill greater faith, that emunah is strengthened within us every time that we daven. And we all need that during this time. So we all pray together, all of us daven together, that we should see Yeshuos and Nechamos, that we should see salvation, that there should be Nechama for those that are going through difficult times. And we'll conclude with a tefillah together, the tefillah of Achenu, and we'll close with this. And I thank you very much for joining us. I hope that everyone is well and stays safe and stays well, please God, in the coming days. Achenu kol beis Yisrael hanisunim batzara v'shivya ha'omdim bein bayam uvein bayavasha hamakom yirachem aleihem v'yotziei mitzara lirvacha umeafela leora umishibud ligula hashta bagala ubizman kariv v'nomar amen. Everyone have a good day. Look forward to seeing you soon.